adding extra calories. Today, eating seems like a daily struggle, a constant battle between pleasure and health.
36-year-old female complaining of pain running down her left arm, diaphoretic. Camera hooked up to the monitor, and key segments are elevated, back lactated running. What's your ETA? About 2 minutes away. Starting pressure.
Copy that.
All 4 units. The body is in good shape. You don't get
Exercise is extremely
High-fat diet is not
Everybody is vulnerable to addiction.
fries in a burger. It's the way to atherosclerosis.
Cancer is going to become the number one issue. To enjoy everything you can while you can.
It would seem that the abundance of food and the wide variety of choices we have in the United States would almost guarantee proper and adequate nutrition for everyone. However, that is not always the case.
There are a lot of people in this country, tens of millions of people in this country, who eat enough calories per day and even grow overweight, but are malnourished. They are not getting the vitamins and minerals that they need. They're not getting antioxidants that they need. They are not controlling obesity, which has so many health consequences. And so malnutrition is a serious epidemic problem in this country, invisible to most people.
Hook up the bioimpedance meter.
The latest research on diet and nutrition confirms that what we eat does indeed play a role in maintaining overall health and well-being. What has changed through the years is the concept of just what a healthy diet is.
When I first started as a nutritionist, we told people that it didn't make a difference whether you ate white bread or whole wheat bread. Now we say the exact opposite. At one time, we actually put polyunsaturated oil in a cup and gave it to patients in hospitals because of, in quotes, the health benefits of polyunsaturates. Now we know that total fat in the diet makes a tremendous difference, and we would never do that again. So over time, a lot of what we used to do has changed dramatically.
However, a few nutritional facts remain constant. Our bodies need the nutrients found in foods to function, to power muscular movements and cell activities, repair tissues, and maintain body temperature. To carry out these metabolic activities, cells need the energy stored in 3 nutrients: carbohydrates, proteins, and fats.
The body prefers to get energy from carbohydrate. Carbohydrate we may refer to as sugars or starches, but we get carbohydrates from grain products, fruits and vegetables primarily.
Carbohydrates are really a great source of energy for the body, particularly complex carbohydrates, because it takes a while for the body to digest them, to absorb them, and then it gives a fairly constant elevation to blood glucose levels, and that's what we want because that's where we're getting our energy from.
Dietary fiber is another important health benefit of complex carbohydrates. The typical American consumes about 10 grams of fiber a day. Medical experts recommend doubling that amount, adding more fiber-rich fruits, vegetables, beans, and whole grain cereal products to the diet.
Protein is used initially in the body to maintain muscle mass, to build cells, antibodies, hormones, etc. And generally that need for protein will be met if we take in 12 to no more than 20% of our calories from protein. Any additional protein that we take in will be used for energy. Calories will be broken down and burned for calories.
And of course, a lot of those proteins are found in animal products such as milk, cheese, eggs, poultry, fish, lamb, beef. Although it's quite possible to also get them by combining plant foods and legumes and things like that.
We will really get enough protein from taking in about 5 to 6 ounces of meat per day. Now, 3 ounces of meat is about the size of a deck of playing cards. So you can kind of imagine a day's intake that if I have a couple ounces, maybe at breakfast or lunch, 3 ounces, that deck of playing cards on my plate at night would really give me enough protein, assuming I'm eating the other foods in the guideline as well. But as Americans, we don't eat the deck of playing cards. We eat the paperback book. A very large paperback book has our portion size.
For health-conscious people who have worked hard to minimize or eliminate fat from their diets, it may come as a surprise to learn that a healthy body actually needs fat to function. The body uses dietary fat to make tissue and hormones, and to provide a protective layer over vital organs.
Women need body fat in order to be fertile, in order to menstruate. When body fat becomes too little, women become infertile. It's a reversible condition, though. If they start putting on body fat, then they start to menstruate again and ovulate and can have children.
But in fact, it's these fatty acids that run the heart and other vital organs in the body is the major food substrate, glucose being another food substrate. So they're a very vital part of our bodies and very important in function. But in high levels, and probably certain types, can also be dangerous to the arterial wall.
Whether a fat or oil is considered dangerous or healthy depends on the type of fatty acid involved. Is it largely polyunsaturated, monounsaturated, or saturated?
Vegetable oils like corn oil, safflower oil, soybean, etc. have a higher polyunsaturated fatty acid content, whereas olive oil, peanut oil, avocados, etc. have more monounsaturated fatty acid. Put canola in there as well. And then our animal fats, which aren't oils, but butter, etc., are more saturated fatty acids. The saturated fatty acids have a higher link to cardiovascular disease and probably cancer. There's increasing evidence that there's a value to having monounsaturated fatty acids, up to about 10% of our total calorie intake from monounsaturated fatty acids. So a balanced diet needs to provide all three of those nutrients in a healthful proportion. Generally speaking, because fat is associated with cardiovascular disease and cancer, we recommend keeping the total amount of calories from fat less than 30% of the diet. Protein is going to build those muscles and body cells, but you can do that if you get 12 to 15 or so % of your calories from protein. So the balance of the calories are going to come from carbohydrate, and that generally puts us in the range of 50 to 60% of total calories coming from carbohydrate. Now, if we're working with a diabetic, we may want to keep the percentage of calories from carbohydrate closer to that 50, 55%, but other people are going to do just fine up with 60%.
If absolutely necessary, we could live weeks without eating anything. Our bodies would get nutrients by digesting its own muscle and fat. However, if we were to go without water, we would die within days. The human body is made up of 50 to 70% water, which makes bodily processes such as digestion and regulation of body temperature possible.
People can die very quickly after becoming dehydrated. So it's really important to drink 6 to 8 glasses of fluid a day. Now one can take that in as fruit juice, as low-fat milk products, those kinds of things. But I was just reading a new study the other day that showed that people who drank more water had reduced risk of bladder cancer.
The body also needs vitamins and minerals to function. Vitamins occur naturally in all living things: cows, carrots, trees, and humans. Each vitamin and mineral plays a key role in keeping the body functioning.
Well, I always think particularly of calcium and iron, because those are the ones that we are commonly concerned about in this day and age. Calcium because of the high incidence of osteoporosis. Women don't realize that they achieve peak bone density by their mid-20s, and if they don't get enough calcium, they are going to end up with weak bones that will become even weaker over time. Iron is very important because it is critical to carrying oxygen to every cell in the body. It's why when we don't get enough iron, we feel tired and lethargic. It's because our cells aren't receiving the oxygen they need.
The question is, how much of any one nutrient is enough? Many countries have established dietary guidelines, recommended dietary allowances, to help people answer this question.
But the very first guideline is eat a variety of foods. Because again, nutrition scientists know that in order to get those 50 nutrients that are needed for human growth, health, and well-being, you need to eat a wide variety. Other guidelines have to do with maintaining a reasonable weight, keeping calories from fat to 30% or less of total calories consumed, eating lots of whole grains and fruits and vegetables, being moderate with respect to alcohol intake, and it'll be interesting to see if there'll be a new guideline about physical activity coming out, because we certainly realize that the good health triangle is made of good nutrition, physical activity, and enough rest.
Because people are different, their nutritional needs are also different.
For example, in the last 10 years, the recommended dietary allowance for vitamin C was increased for smokers because research demonstrated that smokers are not as good at metabolizing ascorbic acid, and therefore they need more of it.
In recent years, other tools have been created to help make dietary decisions less complex. The food guide pyramid, for example, is based on the idea that no single food group provides all the nutrients people need.
If you truly followed it, your calories would be in check, your fat intake would be in check, you'd get the proper amount of nutrients from plant sources like vegetables and fruits. It seems overly simplistic, but there really is a lot of depth to it if you look into it.
The shape of the pyramid directs people toward those food groups that should dominate their diet.
The breads and cereals and rice and tortillas at the bottom, those great complex carbohydrates, and then next the fruits and vegetables that have all of the wonderful vitamin A, vitamin C. Then of course comes the milk and cheese and yogurt next to the poultry and fish. And then at the top, which we're supposed to be eating the least of, are the fats and the simple sugars. So that basically you're supposed to be eating primarily from the lower part of the pyramid, narrowing the number of servings as one goes up.
And it makes sense. Whether you talk about what we do today or whether you think about what was probably the way that foods were eaten hundreds and even thousands of years ago. Grains are always available. Society after society has been oriented towards an agrarian lifestyle with hunting and gathering as kind of a hit and miss sort of thing. So meat eating is episodic, but grains and fruits and vegetables are there all the time. So now we've formulated what our ancestors have been doing for millennia into this nice little pyramid.
Unfortunately, in the United States, we have a rather unbalanced pyramid with more servings at the top and fewer at the bottom.
The labels on processed foods also cater to the needs of health-conscious consumers. Each package or can lists nutrition facts, the calories and nutrients contained in each single serving of the product. Anyone trying to limit calories or fat, or maximize the intake of vitamins, minerals, and fiber, can check the label to see just what they're getting.
I look at how many fat grams are in a serving and try and figure out how that fits into the overall recommendation for a day's intake. The other thing I look at is how much saturated fat is in a product. Saturated fat is very responsible for raising blood cholesterol levels, so that's something that a lot of people need to pay attention to. For many people, sodium is an important thing to look at if they have high blood pressure or congestive heart failure or certain conditions that warrant a low sodium diet. We would look at sodium. And something that's often overlooked is fiber. I look at the fiber content because many times you can get a comparable product that has more fiber just by incorporating whole grains into it.
With all of this information and the wide range of nutritious foods available, why would anyone need to take dietary supplements like multi-purpose vitamins?
Pills are not a substitute for good nutrition because many of the essential nutrients cannot be isolated, synthesized, and put into a pill.
We can get 100% or more of the USRDA, the recommended dietary allowance, from a variety of foods. But are we taking in that variety of foods on a daily basis in order to provide the nutrients? And then other items like the calcium is a bit tougher to get. So supplements may be indicated for some individuals.
Certainly pregnant women who have increased nutrient needs, certainly to someone who is sick and is not able to consume the amount of food they need. In those cases, yes, we do recommend supplements.
Vegetarians may also need to exercise caution in terms of their nutrient intake, despite the healthy aspects of their diet.
Once one starts eliminating a lot of foods from the diet and just restricting what one is consuming to a very narrow range of foods, then you're at greater and greater risk of not meeting your nutrient needs. Vegetarians, there's a concern about protein, of course, because all of the essential amino acids are generally found in animal foods, and if you don't eat any animal foods, you have to make sure to combine plant foods in the correct way so that an amino acid that's low in one food is combined with another plant food where the amino acid is there in a plentiful amount.
Non-meat sources of protein could come from beans, legumes, pinto beans, kidney beans, black beans, lentils, etc., tofu. Some from seeds and nuts, although those are higher fat sources of protein as well.
Also, iron is another problem because meat is an excellent source of iron. When you eliminate lean meats from the diet, you're eliminating a very good source of iron. Not that you can't be well nourished, you can as a vegetarian. It's just that people need to pay some attention. They need to choose foods more carefully.
Disease prevention through nutrition is a relatively new area of research that explores the link between certain foods and the nutrients in them, and their ability to prevent or minimize a long list of medical conditions, including heart disease, high blood pressure, and cancer. For example, researchers have found a correlation between foods which contain phytochemicals and antioxidants and the slowing of normal wear and tear of the body.
Phytochemicals and antioxidants reduce oxidative damage to cellular tissue, and that's involved not only in the aging process, but also in carcinogenesis, where cells become weak, they mutate, and you get cancer cells. And these substances are found primarily in fruits and vegetables.
A lot of the research lately has really supported the intake of vegetables and fruits, whether it's the cruciferous vegetables or certain ones that contain vitamin C or beta-carotene or fiber.
In research trials with heart patients, results thus far are mixed.
It's our belief that it's possible that once a disease process is established to the point that you already manifest the symptoms or had a heart attack or a stroke, that the antioxidants or the vitamins may be too late. You can't use them as treatment. Their role may be in preventing that from occurring. So early on, you want to start the antioxidants and see if you can reduce the amount of atherosclerosis or the amount of disease, heart disease, that develops.
Is a diet filled with antioxidants an anti-cancer diet? Evidence is inconclusive. However, there is evidence that an antioxidant diet low in saturated fats can lower cholesterol levels and help prevent heart disease.
In laboratory work and in animal work, antioxidants such as vitamin E have been shown to perhaps slow the atherosclerotic process, the disease process. And it's felt that that's done by inhibiting these oxidative changes to cholesterol.
Dietary manipulations ought to be aimed at the prevention of heart disease for a little while longer, because we understand how that works. Heart disease is a more common disease than cancer, and it makes more sense to focus your diet there. Probably when the dust settles, those diets are going to be the ones that turn out to lower cancer risks as well. They'll probably be pretty smart cancer diets, but we just are way behind the cardiologist at figuring out the diet part of this whole thing.
Adapting and maintaining healthier eating habits is not always as easy as it sounds. It takes work and long-term commitment.
So a physician says, well, just stop eating that. Well, you can't just stop eating that high-fat food that you've been eating for 40 years. It takes time to adjust and find ways to moderate it and or dilute it or whatever needs to be done, so you lose the urge to taste that food, and you can then eat the lower fat or other types of foods. Going cold turkey never really works, and one has to adapt and moderate slowly over time.
And people are hard on themselves, so I often like to point out, well, how many years were you doing it another way? You've just given yourself 6 months practice. Why are you beating up on yourself? Because you didn't do it right or perfectly this time.
I was brought up by European parents who meat and potatoes. Liver was a big item every week for that iron. That was my taste for many years. High-fat milks and cheeses and things like this.
When we learn to ride a bicycle, or when we learn to tie shoes or type on a keyboard, we made mistakes. So I think we have to allow ourselves to make mistakes as we're learning new food behaviors.
And slowly over time, using tricks, diluting the milk, for example, eventually going down to non-fat milk, I cannot even remember the taste of high-fat cream milks anymore. And if I was even exposed to it, I'd be sickened by it. And so it's a matter of changing your taste slowly over time.
The local supermarket may be a place to begin. Walking down the aisles, making choices, with a nutritionist coaching you each step of the way.
So if I were walking down the aisle in the grocery store with you, what I would look for would be, well, what are we putting in the grocery cart? Are you going to be able to get enough wholesome, fairly unprocessed, simple foods to be the foundation of your diet? And then how might you use some other food items?
To start with, nutrient-packed fruits and vegetables provide a nutritious foundation.
Now, fresh would be great, but you may tell me you don't have time to prepare and cook those. So we could go over and look for some frozen items that were prepared